I'm Rick Edwards. I'm the Chief of Police. It's been a terrible 2 weeks in our city. Kids have seen their parents killed. Parents have seen their kids killed. 8 people have been killed since 3/31 of this year. 4 of those, unfortunately, have been juveniles. We've cleared 1 by arrest. 1 is pending a self-defense claim. And we are very close to coming to a conclusion on several of those cases right now. The common theme in these murders are simple arguments that have escalated into gunfire. Taking a gun to an argument may make you feel safer, but it doesn't make you safer. In some of these cases, adults have tried to intervene. In some of these cases, adults have exacerbated the situation. So what is RPD doing about this? Last night, I called in all of our property crimes detectives, put them in uniforms and marked police cars, and we had them patrolling our hotspots. I've also asked the area Virginia State Police to come in this week and start assisting us. They're focusing on our 21 hottest spots in Richmond, and they'll be doing that all week. We will also be providing security and extra police presence at pickup and drop-off locations for Richmond Public Schools, particularly focusing on the East End schools. Every one of these cases this past week, we've had Richmond community mediators responding, we've had the police chaplains, and our partners in the Trauma Healing and Response Network. 5 of our homicide victims were shot in these hotspots. Other people that were shot and wounded were in these hotspots. We know where these are occurring. So that's why we're going to be focusing upon them. Last year, we instituted Operation Safe Summer. That started June 10th. And lasted the entire summer. And we saw a 30% reduction in gun violence. We saw 176 illegal firearms taken out of the hands of criminals. And we saw 10 Glock switches taken that summer. And we had a lot of success, and it led to an overall 7% reduction in gun and violent crime last year. It helped drive that. We can't wait until June, so we're starting it this week. My partners in the Virginia State Police, the ATF, FBI, the United States Attorney's Office, and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office are all on board to assist us. And we will start that this Friday. I do have some asks of the community. So at this time, I'm asking if you know about illegal firearms, so please let the Richmond Police Department know. 780-1000, you can remain anonymous. We need to get these illegal firearms off of our streets. Notify the Richmond Police Department if you are seeing social media beefs going. We're asking that you tell us about that so we can try to intervene. We do that on case-by-case basis, but there's opportunities for more of that. And we're asking our parents to help us lower the temperature of what's going on right now. We will also be focusing on curfew. This starting right now at 11 p.m. We're asking parents to bring their children inside their homes where they can be safe. So at this point, I'll ask Mayor Stoney to step in.
Thank you so much, Chief. And I want to begin by thanking you and the Richmond Police Department for all you do for the city of Richmond. And I want to commend you and the RPD for your devoted efforts to curb gun violence in our city. These last couple of weeks have been difficult for all of us, not just for the families involved, not just for those who've lost individuals, but also I know for the hardworking officers as well who devote their lives to keeping these communities safe. I want to thank you also for moving up the timeline of the Operation Safe Summer Part 2 as well. We did see some great value out of that last year in reducing crime during the summer months when our kids are home. We're going to get that ratchet up a little bit earlier this year, and I think that's necessary. My fellow Richmonders, it pains me once again to be in front of you today to talk about an issue that we unfortunately know too well in this 60 square miles, and that's the issue of gun violence. And as the chief stated, over the past several weeks, not just here in the city, but in the region at large, we've seen some devastating, senseless acts of violence. People losing their lives, people being maimed by a firearm. And I want you to know that my heart hurts, because at the end of the day, we're talking about young people losing their lives. Teenagers who've got a lot of life to live, and life on this earth is being cut short because the inability for us to solve conflict without a firearm. So I have a direct message to the young people who choose to pick up a gun and pull a trigger. We will find you. You will be held accountable. I can guarantee you that. And here's the thing. We have all these folks, all the folks in our community who are all supportive of the efforts for holding you accountable. There are repercussions for injuring and killing someone in this city. You can be sure of that. For the parents and guardians of those who are choosing to involve themselves in gun violence, we need you to step up. We need you to step your game up. And for those parents who do not have the ability to do that, we as a community at large are here to help. If you are running into a problem that makes it difficult for you to care for your child, to parent your family, please let us know. The doors are open, whether it's in the faith community, the nonprofit community, organizations who are in these neighborhoods. We all want to do our part, but we do request that you do your part as well. And here's the thing, as a person who grew up in a single family home raised by my grandmother, I know there are challenges out there. It is hard to meet the rent, to put food on the table, but the top responsibility of parenthood is to care for your child no matter where they are, what time of day it is. After 11 o'clock, I want our parents and our guardians to ask, where are our children? Where are our children? And so when I say I need our parents to step up, I need the parents to step up, I need the guardians to step up, and I need our community to rise to the occasion as well. We have long been a community that we've lost young people senselessly for years and generations. Folks, unfortunately, who have fallen through the cracks. I've talked to the parents. I know the stories. And the stories behind some of the loss that we've experienced the last day that will devastate you. Right, Councilwoman Robertson? They will devastate you. Despite their best efforts, they're trying to make it work. And sometimes it doesn't work out for them. But it doesn't mean that there's a new lane so you can go down, a lane of violence that you should go down. We want to prevent that. So once again, we are throwing the entire kitchen sink at this ongoing problem. We're going to use everything in our human services division, the trauma-informed network, all of it, to ensure that we reduce the amount of these incidents that are occurring in our neighborhoods. I live in a neighborhood where I hear the sound of gunfire. A lot of us, if you live on the East End or you live in South Side, if you live in North Richmond, you hear a chorus of gunfire far too regularly. There are things that we can do in terms of enforcement, which we will, and things we can do in terms of wraparound, which we will. But there are some things that we just can't do. And we can't care for every single child in this city. There's roughly 30,000 or more. I don't know what the census data says. Something like that. All these individuals here at City Hall, the police department, all the teachers who devote their time and effort to loving these young people, they can't be home with those kids at night. Just can't. And so that's why I'm calling upon our parents and our guardians for us to step our game up. Step our game up. And if you need our help to do that, I'm raising my hand. I'm raising my hand. We're all in. We are all in. We're all in. I believe my responsibility is to bring the superintendent here, who unfortunately, since he's been the superintendent of our schools, has seen too many young people lose their lives in our neighborhoods. In our neighborhoods. And I know this is as traumatic for him as it is for all of us here, because that's one less person who's going to be in the classroom, less person who's going to get that high school diploma and go off into this world. So, Superintendent Cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. First, I just wanted to bring condolences on behalf of the school board chair, Ms. Stephanie Rizzi, who unfortunately was not able to be here today. I also want to recognize that we are joined by two of our school board members, Mrs. Cheryl Burke and Mrs. Mariah White. Thank you so much for joining us here, and I know the whole school board wanted to be in attendance as well. I also want to thank Chief Edwards for his help. RPD has been an extraordinary partner to us at RPS. Whenever there have been issues in the community, we have always felt that RPD has had our back and our kids' back, and so we appreciate that. And certainly to you, Mr. Mayor, from the very first day that I have taken this role, you have always been a great partner to RPS in supporting our kids. As has been shared, it's been a difficult couple of weeks since Easter. 8 RPS students have been shot and 4 have died just since Easter. The school communities that have been affected are Martin Luther King Middle School, Chimborazo Elementary School, Armstrong High School, Bellevue Elementary School, Richmond Alternative School, Thomas Jefferson High School. And as you well know, our young people have friends and family members who extend across the city, and so really all of our schools have been deeply affected. And what I think folks don't realize is these friends and family members of those who die, they show up to school the next day. And it's our teachers and our counselors and our psychologists and our food nutrition folks and our bus drivers and our custodians who stand in the gap and do what we ask of them, which is to teach and to lead and to serve with love. And so to all the young people out there and to families, I want you to know, RPS is a place where your children will be loved. All that we ask in return is that you do everything you possibly can to help our young people make the best possible choices, the best possible decisions, so that these arguments do not become deadly. The team pulled the data for me, and since 2019, 169 juveniles in the city of Richmond have been shot. Nearly all of those were RPS students. Think about the impact that has across friends and family members and teachers. Our community, our schools, they are hurting, and they should be focused on the SOLs, which we're giving in 2 weeks, and instead, many of them this morning and last week and tomorrow are holding grief sessions. Because that's what we do. We will always stand in the gap for our kids, but we have to change this. Last week, I had the opportunity to briefly attend a standing room only funeral for the 14-year-old MLK student who was slain. Councilmember Robertson was there. And what struck me is all of the kids from MLK who were able to attend, they all have the t-shirts with the picture of their friend who they lost. What is heartbreaking is that so many of our kids have that t-shirt, and many of them have multiple t-shirts. No child should have a t-shirt of a friend that they lost to gun violence, let alone 2, 3, or 4 of them. So as the chief said, as the mayor said, I beg of our community, please do everything you can. If you hear something, say something. Young people, if you're struggling, talk to your teacher, talk to your counselor, talk to a pastor, talk to anyone who might be able to help you. This has to stop. Thank you.
All right, now I think we're going to take some questions. So please, can we, anyone out there?
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned parents step up, please have the parents get more involved, even as you acknowledge they struggle to meet food on the table, the rent, et cetera. Given the convictions of the parents in Michigan for what their minor child, the violence perpetrated by the minor child, is that a suggestion that perhaps the times that you'll focus on holding them accountable in terms of criminal charges? Bill, that's a great question. Obviously, here we're not responsible for that part of the legal system. That's the Commonwealth Attorney's role here, the chief prosecutor of our city. However, I do believe you make a great point, and that is, in that mass shooting in Michigan, the parents were held accountable for their guns, for the guns getting into the hands of that young man. And I want every parent to know that that has opened up a whole another level of case law. That's why I'm calling for responsibility and for them to step up. I'm not a prosecutor, I'm not an attorney. That's not my world. My world is for, number one, enforcing the law. And so if your child does use a firearm and injures and kills someone, we're going to find you. We're going to hold you accountable. However, I do believe that if you're a parent out there or a guardian out there, you should know. This is what I've been talking about. You have to have a basic curiosity about what's going on in your child's life. Where are they after 10 o'clock? They should be in your house. It's not our job to parent kids. And maybe this is a little bit different for me now because I do have a child. And it takes, you gotta be there for them. And some of these kids who unfortunately have lost their life, they don't have parents to lean on in some cases. And then the guardians have their own troubles as well. And so when the superintendent talks about us filling in the gaps, folks, that's what we do here. That's the work of our government in this inner city. We do our best to fill in the gaps for the least, for the lost. But we can't fill in every single gap. There's no dollar that can fill in every single gap. There's no employee on the city payroll that can fill in every single gap. And that's why we are here collectively pleading with our neighborhoods, which back in the day used to raise our kids as well. It wasn't just the parents. There was like if the neighbor next door knew that you were acting out of control, you knew you were going to be held accountable one way or another. I'm asking for that to come back. That we all share in this. Because having your neighbors hold each other accountable is a whole lot different than the legal system holding you accountable. And if the parents don't step up, I think, like I said, that lane is wide open now after Michigan.
Chief, it's been a rough couple weeks for your staff. I know you're dealing with staffing shortages. Now you're seeing 4 juveniles murdered in 2 weeks. You're stepping up Operation Safe Summer Part 2 early. How is your staff doing, and how are they going to tackle this while they're also trying to prosecute
Well, we've been able to function in our current environment and our current platform with our staffing shortages by having a really good plan, by being laser-like focused on where these crimes are occurring, and by partnering with other people. Like I said, last year was the first time in several years we were able to bring in all of the law enforcement partners in the region to focus on the city of Richmond. We need the help right now from them, and they've been gracious enough to commit to that, so I'm thankful to them. But if you're talking about how our officers are feeling, you know, I was probably the second or third officer on scene at the shooting on Spotsylvania, where we had to go into that building and escort 4 children past their parents' dead bodies. And we're all parents, and I can tell you that from the 15-year-old down to the 3-year-old, having to see those children crying as they're passing their dead parents is heartbreaking for all of us. So it's not an easy business that we're in. So.
That 11 p.m. curfew, how long is that going to be implemented for? Is police enforcing that, and what's the consequence for kids who break that?
Well, it's been on the books for many years. It's for the city of Richmond, 11 p.m. But ideally, we don't want the police scooping up kids and bringing them home. If we have to do that, we'll do that. Ideally, we want parents and guardians taking that role on to get them inside. But ideally, that's not the solution. That's a stopgap in the meantime. We would rather not have to interact with our kids like that.
I know you mentioned that a lot of these shootings started with arguments. Can you speak
Yes.
a little bit about maybe, do you guys know if these are gang related? Is there a general threat to the public? What's kind of the root here?
It doesn't appear to be gang related. When I say arguments, if we were talking about the murder rate in the 90s in Richmond, when we looked at those motives, it was territory, drug disputes, robberies gone bad. And as bad as those are, at least that makes more sense. It's more frustrating when you see these are totally preventable, these are small arguments that escalate, and when everyone in that argument has a gun, that's how you see what we're seeing. The first bullet that gets fired, all the bullets get fired, everyone with a gun. So if you think you're gonna fight someone and bring a gun and it's gonna make you safer, it's not.
Chief, you said that there were some instances where adults tried to intervene, and then there were some instances of adults actually making the problems worse. How often do you see that? I mean, what's the percentage here? Is it more one versus the other?
No, it's just a few cases that stuck out, and when we're doing our deep dives and we're analyzing these shootings over the past 2 weeks, and we do that religiously in the Richmond Police Department. We're obsessed with the data. We're obsessed with trying to stop the next one. We're obsessed with finding out where retaliation may be coming from. And for whatever reason, these 2 weeks we're seeing that. We're seeing those arguments, and you're seeing some good Samaritans, some good adults stepping in, trying to break it up before the gunfire starts, and then you'll see some where the adults are actually starting it.
Can I say
Yes, sir.
something real quick? I just wanted to add to what the chief said just earlier about when one trigger is pulled, there's a high likelihood then there will be more triggers pulled right there in that same vicinity. Why? Because everybody has a damn gun. Whether legal or illegal, everyone has a gun. We saw the same thing happen in Kansas City, where one shot was fired, then many more shots are fired. So the question is, we do our part here at the local government level. Again and again and again, we will call on our state partners and we will call on our federal partners. There's no reason, some way, somehow, a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old is getting their hands on a firearm in our city. They're not being sold that directly. So how are they getting their guns? We have a pretty good idea how that's happening. It's being done illegally. And the proliferation of these weapons, I mean, it have saturated our underprivileged areas of the city. East End, South Side. We don't make guns in Richmond, okay? And you can, probably there's no gun shops in the city either. But for some way, somehow, they happen to be concentrated in the city. So, listen to when the chief asks, and his department asks, if you do own a weapon and you do own it legally, safely store your weapon. your car is not a place to store your weapon. Store your weapon safely. Is that too much to ask? And don't let your weapon get in the hands of someone who's not old enough to have a weapon, who shouldn't have a weapon. That's all we're asking. To me, these sound like basics. It should be. But you need to be held accountable if you just let your gun just walk away. When we talk about folks breaking into cars, where do you think those guns end up? Where do you think they end up? So if you live in the west end of the city, in a neighborhood like the Fan, like the Museum District, Windsor Farms, your car's broken into and you have your gun in that vehicle, and that gun gets out, where do you think the gun's going? It's going to be used in a crime in the near future. So lock your damn guns up.
Chief Edwards, you said you're close to a conclusion on several cases. Are we talking these are juveniles also committing the crimes and being killed, or is this a mix, or when are we gonna see mugshots?
It's a mix. We'll have a response by the end of the week on some of these cases.
I also want to ask too, you know, in these last 2 weeks, this obviously is not just an issue that's centralized here in Richmond. We've seen
Yes.
kids coming into Richmond and dying. We've seen teen gun violence in Chesterfield and Henrico. Are you guys considering a multi-agency response to teen gun violence at this point? Are you talking with other, police departments or these other counties and weighing that option?
Yes, well, we're certainly sharing intelligence. So we meet on a bi-monthly basis with our partners with Chesterfield, Henrico, Hanover, Virginia State Police, and our federal partners, where we talk about gun crime. We talk about trends and patterns and how we can intercede. We've certainly had operations on the borders with Chesterfield and Henrico. There is a bit of a jurisdictional issue. That's why the Virginia State Police does not have that problem. But you're right, it is a regional issue. And it's an issue where, again, it's, there are people who are solving their problems with gunfire that should have been a fist fight.
Any more questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, obviously, in regards to gun control, there's only so much you can do on the city level. Do you think the legislator and the governor's office should be doing more to stop this curtail the amount of guns on the streets right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue, left or right, rich or poor. A gun is a gun, and it can be used to kill anyone in any of those categories. And I just don't think we're doing enough. I don't think the state's doing enough. I'm grateful for the legislation that's been passed over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, but we got to do more. And our federal partners really need to be the ones to step up. I mean, I've seen on video folks with AR-15s. I've gone on YouTube and seen folks walk around our neighborhoods in this city with weapons that will blow your mind. You could not fathom that was going on in Richmond, Virginia. But it can be found. It can be found. So I think the governor should be doing more. I think the federal government should be doing more as well.
VSP officers, how many, what will that look like?
We're looking for more than we had last year, but we anticipate, we don't have the numbers right now, but it'll be 12 troopers partnered with our focus mission team and our detectives we were gonna start June 1st. Like I said, it's starting this Friday. So they weren't prepared for that. They weren't prepared to get my call on a Sunday afternoon, but they all took it and they've all committed to doing what's necessary to keep our community safe.
You mentioned 21 hotspots in the city. Can you give a little more context as to what those are, where those are?
So we base that upon, and we've done it different ways. This year, at the beginning of the year, we analyzed our city. We broke it into 29,000 areas of 1 to 3 blocks. We asked our crime analysts to look at what crimes do we want, what are most predictive of gun violence. And that's homicides involving firearms, non-fatal shootings, robberies where a person is shot, shooting into occupied dwelling, and shooting into occupied vehicle. And in years past, we did 5 years. This year, I asked for a recency analysis. So we did 5 years and then the last 6 months and last year, and we came up with a list of the top 21. Originally it was 22, one of those fell off the list. So because one family moved out of that block and it stopped. So we are now down to 22, that's where we focus on. And like I said, several of these incidents took place in these hotspots within 1 to 3 blocks of them. So we know where this crime is gonna be focusing on. We're having a deterrent strategy, but we're also gonna be enforcing the law in those areas. And we're gonna ask, and we're also gonna be having community events in those areas. We're gonna be doing community walks. We want our community seeing us out there in these neighborhoods that are experiencing crime, because the vast majority of people that live in these hotspots aren't creating the problems. So it's a tiny segment of the population causing almost all of our gun violence. So that's how we're gonna try to address it.
Are you partnering with the CA's office? Is there someone here on the Commonwealth Attorney's office?
The CA is certainly aware of our hotspots and our plan for Operation Safe Summer, and they have dedicated prosecutors not only assigned to this case, but also to the federal government to adopt some of those cases federally. So Ms. McEachin's office is fully involved.
All right. Any last questions? Last questions?
Someone's raising their hand.
Are you from media outlet, ma'am? No. Okay, we can address it in the next.
I'll talk to you after.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.